Disclaimer: I mean no ill will towards any of the drivers or companies I mentioned in this video. Even though this is an opinion piece, I'd rather be honest with both them and you at home watching this. You guys have gotten me this far. You deserve that much. If you've talked with me before, be it in real life, over Facebook DMs or Discord, or you've watched a few of my videos before, you know that I have a few opinions when it comes to different topics in RC, but I usually don't broadcast them. That's why in this video, I want to go over some topics that I normally wouldn't touch, which is why this video isn't really sponsored by anyone. The links are still down there if you'd like to support me, but that's as far as I'll go. What I will say is that if this is the first video of mine that you're watching, I recommend you look at a different one. With that out of the way, let's start with the thing that made me want to make this video in the first place. The RC10 B7 was released not too long ago at the beginning of 2024. To be fair in the B7's defense, the B6.4 was a tough act to follow up. The B6.4 was easy to use, easy to tune and work on, very durable, and assuming you tuned it correctly, very easy to drive. Not only that, but considering how new platforms usually go for manufacturers, it wasn't at all surprising to see a few early adopters start to have issues. Chassis bending and breaking, transmission gear stripping, C&D block breaking were the primary problems people had, and if they were few and easy to avoid for most people, this wouldn't have been an issue. The problem is the fact that this wasn't a small issue and that only a few people were having. Lots of racers who had success with the B6 platform weren't having a good time with the B7 durability-wise, both external and internal. Even though the car drove very well out of the box, it still had those same issues I mentioned before, even to this day with later batches. Once again though, this isn't what bothers me about the B7. What bothers me is its development, and how a lot of these growing pains could have been avoided had Associated not been so exclusive about it, let's say. To break focus for a moment, I want to bring your attention to the Gamma N1 and by extension the N1E. Now I've reviewed this car before and I very much enjoyed it on all the surfaces I ran it on, from high grip calcium dirt to loose arena style races like what you're seeing on screen right now. The thing is though, the N1 and by extension the N1E did not have an easy birth. It was revised and changed a lot throughout its development for a number of reasons, for not having enough droop to other durability woes like the wing mount. The difference here though is that the N1 wasn't designed to just be in the hands of only the pros. It was designed to be used by everyone, despite its odd design. It wasn't just tested by pro drivers at tracks during weekdays when no one was around. It was given to regular weekend warriors and regular racers to test as well, the same people who would actually be buying the car at full price, and it shows. To this day, it's still one of the easiest, most user-friendly cars to work on I have ever tested, while also being deceptively simple in terms of tuning options. Coming back to the B7, those same problem points I mentioned before would have been pointed out by your average racer who doesn't have a degree in engineering or gets paid to race. Regular racers crash. They may not put things together entirely optimally. They may not use a motor with this style of mounting system. To put it brutally, the B6 was idiot-proof and the B7 was not. Now none of this would be an issue if two things weren't the case. For one is its popularity despite its flaws. Currently, the B7 and B7D are the most popular two-wheel drive buggies on A-Main's online store. The B6 was also the most popular two-wheel drive buggy on A-Main as well for a while. The difference is that the B6 was very beginner-friendly, and like I said, the B7 is not. This leads me to my second point. The fact that whenever someone asks which car they should get as a starter, the B7 is now the first one to be listed by most racers not on a contract simply because it's an Associated. The reason this kind of frustrates me is because there are other better options that are more durable and or cheaper than the B7 that would suit a novice or beginner level driver much better. The Mugen MSB1, the Yokomo SO 2.0, and even the Serpent SRX2 Spider are prime examples of cars that are easy to work on, build, and tune for most people. With all that said, there are many different hopups made for the B7 that are supposed to rectify its issues, one of which makes me irrationally upset. Not too long after the B7 was released and people were having issues with it, many different companies began making replacement parts that were supposed to be stronger than the stock parts, particularly the C&D blocks and the transmission. A few companies like Willspeed and now Clinic have come out with aftermarket transmission gears to replace the ones that come in the stock kit. R1 Works decided to go one step further and release a completely new 3-gear transmission for the B7. It's made of aluminum and it costs $164.99, not including tax or shipping. Now, this will lead into my next talk about stock racing, but the point of the R1 transmission is twofold. For one, it's supposed to eliminate the main failure point that most people have with the B7, that being the transmission, while also reducing the rotating mass of the car to make it better for stock racing. This logic is sound, and I have no ill will towards R1 for making the transmission itself. What annoys me is, well, everything around it. The main selling point of the B7 is that it was a 5-gear transmission car, moving the motor forward and allowing it to have more corner speed on higher grip tracks like carpet and modern day dirt tracks. So why spend another $165 on a transmission to make the car into essentially a more fragile B6.4? Once more, if your goal is to make a better stock car, why not start with the car that already has a 3-gear transmission and save yourself both time and money? Finally, this leads me to the stock racing in the US as a whole. Now, you get a lot of racers say that in order to be competitive in stock racing in the US, you need to drop a stupid amount of money to be competitive. As an exercise, why don't we take a look at all the things that someone may say is necessary to be competitive in stock? For one, we're going to need a car. We'll go with the B7 as that's the most popular one right now. Specifically the B7D, as stock is most popular in the US and dirt tracks are popular here as well. We have the car itself, the titanium screw kit and turnbuckles, ceramic bearing kit for the transmission, an Exalt gold spec motor for dirt racing. We can save a little bit on the ESC as we don't need a heavy mod one, a super speed servo from ProTech, and a battery from Exalt as well. And this leaves us with the final cost of... Keep in mind, this was with no spares, wheels, tires, or even the R1 transmission I mentioned before, along with any other small things needed to complete the kit like battery terminals, paint, and other small things of the sort. Here's the thing though, none of the hop-ups I mentioned are necessary at all. Titanium screw kits, ceramic bearings, $170 hand-picked motors are not necessary to do well for most people. I mentioned before that a friend of the channel, Will McIver, was able to make it to the A main of the stock 13.5 class of Masters of Dirt 2023 with a completely stock X-Ray XB4. No plastic internal gears, no titanium or aluminum, just a stock out-of-the-box XB4 that's been tuned well with good enough electronics. Will is not the rule though, he is the exception. When you look at most top-level stock racers' builds, they tend to have their cars completely decked out in titanium and other lightweight stuff like plastic internal gears. As such, when a new racer gets into 10th scale and inevitably gets into the stock classes to avoid running with the really fast mod guys, he'll look at a lot of these faster drivers doing really well with these hop-ups and one of two things will happen. Either they will over time buy all of these hop-ups and not see any improvement and then become frustrated and eventually quit, or become discouraged at the prospect of racing these cars that are anything but stock with an actual stock car and just not race to begin with. It doesn't help that both these drivers and companies heavily push expensive parts and to market them as damn near essential. The thing is though, all of these drivers like Hunter King, Talon Henley, Kyle Go, Mason Templeton, Adrian Marasco, and many others would already be dominant without any of the hop-ups they use. The only thing these upgrades do for them is help them push the car to 105% of what it's capable of. 90% of drivers struggle to get to 90% of their car's potential, myself included. Ryan Stiles Harris is not faster than you because he has an R1 transmission in his B7. He's faster than you because he's been racing for longer than I've been alive. And he has a better idea of how to tune a car for how he wants it to drive. And this is the point I want more people to take home with them. That the money you spent on titanium screws or ceramic bearings could have been better spent on something like a spring set, wheels and tires, shock and diff fluids, maintenance parts to keep your cars fresh for each run, practice days on the track, and other tuning aids that would be far better investments than that month's hot new motor. You don't need a $150 to $170 motor for each track surface you go to. You don't need a $150 titanium screw kit unless the primary purpose is to reduce corrosion, and even then you can just get a stainless steel kit. You don't need an $80 ceramic bearing kit. You don't need to drop dummy money on a stock kit to make it competitive in any class. And I wish more people would push that message. rather than pushing the narrative that these upgrades are necessary to be competitive. If you made it this far in the video, firstly, I'd like to say thank you for listening to me ramble and rant about topics that have been on my mind for a while. Making this video was like therapy for me. I would say to subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more of this type of video, but chances are I won't be doing another rant video for a little while. I will still ask you to subscribe if you haven't already, and be sure to comment about your take on either these topics or the other RC topics that make you upset. Before we go, I'd like to thank my RC patrons, Michael Williams, RC World Discord server, Casey Nix, Ben Reeves, Dave Armstrong, Ron Bedingfield, Kaden Merks, Ian Petrie, Salvador Rivera, Zach Hawes, Jeffrey Kungs, James T. Anderson, Shane T. Ruth, Gable Barber, and especially Morrison Watt. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.